Hey everyone, this is Lawrence Watkins, founder and CEO of Great Black Speakers, here with you once again for another Great Black Speakers webcast. Today we have a very special guest, my fraternity brother and friend, Mr. Darryl Bell. Darryl M. Bell, right?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
yeah.
so much.
Sorry about that. Darryl M. Bell. Uh, he's best known for playing Ron from A Different World, but he's been doing a lot of cool and interesting stuff over the last, 20, 25 years in the entertainment industry, behind the scenes as it relates to finance, technology, and media. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. So, Brother Bell, how are you doing today?
I am great, Brother Watkins. It is good to see you internationally. Thanks to the wonders of modern technology. This is really exciting to have this interview with you on this sort of medium.
Right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And, one of my goals for 2017 is to be able to interview all of our speakers within Great Black Speakers and to just, replay those interviews over and over and over again so people can be exposed to the wealth of knowledge, expertise, and inspiration that you all have and that you all are willing and able to share. So I want to hear about yeah, man. And I want to hear about your inspirational story in regards to how you got started in the entertainment industry. So, A Different World was your first acting gig. Is that correct?
No, it wasn't. My first acting gig, which whenever I tell this story, it is one that usually people find unbelievable but encouraging, particularly for those who aspire to be performers or actors in the entertainment industry. I actually, my first job in the entertainment business was School Days, Spike Lee's second film. Well, his second major release. I was home one weekend from Syracuse and just happened to meet Spike on the street where I went to go see She's Gotta Have It, actually. And Spike was outside and they were selling the Please Baby, Please Baby, Baby, Please t-shirts for She's Gotta Have It. And they cost $10. And I told the person selling them, $10 is too much for a t-shirt. They said, well, what do you want? I said, a part in his next movie. Said, well, you're going to have to ask him for that. So I asked him and I got it. That's how I got started. Now, that's the truncated version. I did have to audition. There was a process, but that's how I ended up being cast in the film. And that's how I ended up in School Days. Now, we shot School Days from February to May of 1987. And then I had planned to come out to California for the summer. And then while television was still in its traditional cycle for new seasons. So in August, right before September, when all of the new fall shows would debut, that's when they were casting for A Different World. And then I actually auditioned for the part of Dwayne Wayne. And it was that, and Kadeem and I became friends and have been friends since School Days. Uh-huh. So when we had the auditions at the same time, he was in New York and I was in LA, and I said, I auditioned for A Different World. He said, so did I. I'm getting a call back. He said, so am I. And I'm like, they're flying me to New York. I'm like, I'll see you there. So yeah. It was only, I want to say there were three of us. It was Kadeem, myself, and I think one other young man. We all auditioned for the part of Dwayne Wayne. Kadeem booked the role, but the producers then had me come back, and then ultimately I got cast as Ron, and then the rest is history. And now, oddly enough, A Different World aired in August or September of '87, but School Days didn't come out until January of '88, somewhere around there. So most people thought that the two were inverted, that we did, A Different World first. And Jasmine was in School Days as well. Mm-hmm. But it was actually the opposite. Spike came first, then came A Different World.
Got you. And of course, he's referring to Jasmine Guy, another one of our speakers. And actually, that's how I got introduced to you, is through Jasmine and her manager, Paul Jandreau. So shout out to both of them. We'll have them on here sooner rather than later as well.
Right.
Yeah, and let's talk about this a little bit more, because I find this story interesting given your father's role in Wall Street. So he was one of the first African Americans that was, really successful and prominent on Wall Street. Is that correct? And how did like your part with different world kind of intertwine with that story?
Well, it's interesting. Yes, my dad, Travers Bell, founded the first African-American member-owned firm on the New York Stock Exchange in 1971. And he was a pioneer in municipal finance for people who are not interested in Wall Street and they can get technical in banking. We don't need to get into that. But for most of the minorities on Wall Street, my father opened the door for more, not only African Americans, but Hispanic-owned firms, Asian-owned firms, women-owned firms, to have a seat at the table in investment banking. So everyone knew me, but and I would say in addition to that, we also owned a chocolate manufacturing firm based in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. And it was always listed in Black Enterprise's top 100 companies. So people knew that I had, this father that was an entrepreneur and successful, and that was my background. I spent most of my summers as a young guy clerking on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange or working at our chocolate manufacturing firm. So my background was always geared toward becoming an investment banker as well as embracing the world of entrepreneurship. So the meeting with Spike kind of turned my career in another direction, but I never lost, my core intrinsic understanding of business and entrepreneurship or my love and aspiration to do that. So often what happens on a series that runs a long time, art begins to imitate life. So you saw Ron's character suddenly have a dad who owned a car dealership, and he wanted his son to come work for his car dealership. And Ron was always attempting a variety of different entrepreneurial pursuits. He and Dwayne had a wake-up service. He tried to sell makeup products. Ron sold makeup products. There were all sorts of things that were, let's just call them less than strategic opportunities.
Yeah, right.
That Ron would pursue. And a lot of that had to do with the writer's knowledge of my background that kind of infused into the character, which was great fun to play. Yeah,
that's very interesting. And, back during that time also, tragedy hit your life, right? In the early days of A Different World. Can you, talk about that and how you had really 3 jobs? You were a student, you had to, manage your dad's firm, and you had this other gig out in California too. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, my dad passed away suddenly and unexpectedly when I was 23, and it was in 1988. No one expected it, and it was at a really difficult time. It was at a transition for not only the investment banking firm, but for the chocolate manufacturing firm as well. And so for me, I had just left school. So, I was still I was fresh off being a college student, then playing a college student in school days, and then playing another college student on A Different World. And I would spend my weeks working, our schedule on A Different World, we'd work for 3 weeks and take a week off. And so I would spend that week off. I'd have to fly back to New York, and I'd be involved in the daily operations of running both businesses. And then I'd have to fly back to California. So I was bi-coastal, and it was a hectic and challenging time. While my father had always anticipated that I would work with him, and it was something that I wanted to do, it wasn't at the time that I expected. So out of that adversity, and both businesses were in a transitional period where we were about to bring on a new CEO at the chocolate manufacturing firm. My father had lots of deals pending with the investment banking firm. And the reason why small businesses have key man insurance is because if you lose someone as seminal as my dad was, oftentimes many of the deals he was working on go with him. Mm-hmm. And that was part of my challenge, as well as managing the climate, because even the economic environment in the late 80s, at the end of Ronald Reagan's term as president, were challenging. So there were a number of crises. I feel in many ways, there are two analogies that I always like. One, there's almost no scenario in life that isn't worthy of a Godfather reference. You know what I mean?
You and
All
LeBron
those,
James.
that's exactly right. So
Yeah.
all those who were loyal to Don Corleone were not loyal to Michael. So
Uh-huh.
I faced some of those challenges, and likewise, I felt not quite in the same way, but like President Barack Obama, he was handed a financial crisis that he had to manage,
Right.
and I felt that very much so, and it was challenging. So one of the great things about being part of Great Black Speakers is I can talk about, how that adversity actually helped not only teach me things that I couldn't have learned otherwise, but it provided a foundation for much of the success I've had afterwards. And while we weren't able to save both firms in my father's absence, I'm actually now finally, and I've never really talked about it, but I've actually now I'm talking with a couple of publishers about actually writing a book about what actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, this is also a timely sort of a phrase about fake news. If you go on the internet and look at what people Google about me, there's a lot of fake news about what actually happened. What I find one of the funniest things when people say, for people in the public eye, often you'll hear, "Don't ever Google yourself because you'll hate what you find," right? Yeah. And for me, one of the most interesting things is that there are posts that say, Darryl Bell lost his father's billion-dollar corporation.
Yeah.
I can only tell you, if I lost $1 billion, it would be worthy of a Wolf of Wall Street movie.
Yeah.
of how I blew $1 million. It's like the first black billionaire that no one knew about until apparently I lost all of his money. It's just the most ridiculous thing. But then when people say, well, why don't you challenge that? I said, well, if you look on the internet, I've been reported dead twice too. That's not real either. But I think it's worthy, and I needed to get to a place in my life where I felt I had the right objectivity about it and the desire to really talk about the substance of what happened, because there are several lessons, particularly for young entrepreneurs or even established companies, to learn about providing a clear path of succession for your companies and for the future of your company and longevity. So I'm looking forward to doing that soon, and then I'll be able to add that to things I'm ready to talk about with Great Black Speakers. How about that?
Yeah, I think a lot of people would love to hear that story.
Yeah.
And I want to know also how that experience of you having to really come in as a 23-year-old CEO to a large a relatively large corporation, right?
Mm-hmm.
How did that affect your career trajectory, and how did you merge that with the work that you're doing in entertainment?
Well, one of the great things about, having a dad who was so successful and so well connected is, from a very young age, I've been exposed to captains of industry at a very high level. So, I remember, my dad was a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, and every year they would have a son and daughter lunch, and we'd have Henry Kissinger, President Ford, all of these really influential speakers that would address this, and I would leave school to go to this. And my dad and I were in the restroom, and my father said, "Hey, John, how you doing? Travers, how are you? Good. I want you to meet my son, Darryl. This is John Rockefeller." Pleasure to meet you. This sort of thing. Yeah. So in that sense, having been, the privilege of being exposed to people who are really successful, getting to talk to them and learn from them, it's helped me in terms of being able to talk with leaders in the entertainment industry, studio executives, and just be comfortable in that environment to know, one, that you belong, and two, how to get things done. So it's been really helpful for me in that respect. It was, like the book, The Things They Don't Teach You at Harvard Business School.
Yeah.
These are the things that you learn. And when you have a business like Daniels and Bell and Cocoline, our two companies that were in crisis and in turnaround, there's a specific skill set to a turnaround of a small business. And you don't want to learn that on your own dime. I can only tell you that.
Right.
But there are things that were helpful there that prepared me not only for my producing career now, but in all of the other entrepreneurial endeavors that I've been involved with since that have been really successful. So it was a great, one could say costly experience, but it is part of the fabric of who I am. And there are certainly things that I could probably do differently in retrospect, but when I look at having produced the projects that I'm producing now, having curated some of the other entrepreneurial endeavors with friends, I wouldn't be who I am today were it not for all those experiences. So.
Right. That's interesting in terms of how your previous experiences when you were 23, 24 years old, trying to do two high-powered jobs, one in Hollywood as a successful actor, then another on Wall Street and in manufacturing. And how those two things merge together, which you have definitely talked about. So you said that it prepared you. So what did it prepare you for? So what are you currently doing, and what are you most excited about for the next year?
Oh wow! I'm currently working on developing a fabulous animated project with the Jim Henson Company. Shh. Don't tell anybody. That's really
You know it's gonna be on YouTube, right?
Don't tell anybody. We're working on something together. Hopefully it's going to be great. I'm working on that. I'm working on my first feature film, developing that. We haven't signed a deal on that yet, so see, I won't even say where that's going. Working on a feature film, enjoying that. I'm also working on producing a national college tour for the cast of A Different World.
Yeah, that's really exciting.
Really excited about that. We started in Norfolk last year with an event that was really successful, that created demand not only from HBCUs, but from other colleges around the country and other organizations around the country that wanted to have our program, not only to talk about the importance of education in college, but all of the subject matter that was covered in A Different World. There were episodes that are all relevant today about this national conversation around student protests, domestic violence, sexual assaults on college campuses, health issues, racial tensions, all of these things which are relevant and in the news today. We covered all these issues with humor on A Different World. So it's allowed us to continue that dialogue with new and younger audiences and have some fun with it. So I'm excited about that. And again, all of these experiences in terms of managing all types of different people, I'm comfortable in a room with great creative artists. And you have to know what that's like to be in a room with artists who are creative and think in colors as opposed to thinking verbally, and that's an experience, right? Or be in a room with people that think musically, and rhythmically, as well as sitting in a room with hardcore suits who want to know the metrics by which any project is going to be successful, and we need to talk about what those financial points are and how that's relevant to the project we're doing. Many artists say, okay, I have to tap out. You're going to have to talk to my manager now. But for me, I love that. I love to get into the nitty gritty of producing and the cameras and the budgets and the insurance and all of the other business components of show business.
Right.
Because that is what it is called. It is show business for real. So I like that. That's how it's prepared me to do both. So I like the fact that I can be in front of the camera. I love to engage with live audiences, but I also like to be behind the camera to talk about how did all this come together, and let's shape this production to tell the stories that we want to tell. And I'd like to provide some balance to the storytelling that specifically not only talk about subjects that are important to everyone, but also to provide, in my view, balance to the stories being told by African Americans about themselves. That's really important to me. So,
right. And, getting back to a different world and the tour that you're planning now, that was a story that was told in the 80s of, a college experience at an HBCU.
yep.
Can you talk about, from your perspective, how that has shaped Black culture, and what do you think are some of the most, I guess, positive outcomes that have come from you being a part of that, but then what A Different World gave to the world?
Wow. Now, I'm already long-winded, and you asked me a complex question, and it's going to take. Let me try to unpack all of that.
Right. That was a lot. I know.
But it was all great. It was all great. So, and if it wasn't something that gets me excited, I could think how I could do this succinctly. So, let me put it this way. One, in 2017, A Different World is celebrating its 30th anniversary.
Wow.
So, we share a unique position in the landscape of television, where A Different World has never been off the air in some capacity since its debut in 1987. Mm-hmm. So I think now you can find A Different World on TV One. I believe it's on Bounce TV. And to the delight of all of our fans, it's finally available on Netflix.
Yes.
So prior to it debuting on Netflix, only season 1 was available on DVD. So now all of our fans can see any episode from any season and binge watch. So we get all these messages. Exactly.
Yeah, I was only 4. I was 3 or 4 years old when that came out.
Is that right?
Yeah.
3 or 4.
Yeah, I always heard about it, but now I get to watch it. Right.
Thank you for telling me how old.
Sorry.
I appreciate it. That's great. That's perfect. Yeah. But that's what's so good about it, is that for all of our fans who watched the show and were fans of the show in its original run, all of them now are parents. Mm-hmm. And all of them now say, not only was I a fan of A Different World, but now my son, my daughter, my nieces, nephews, now they're fans of A Different World. So it's encouraging a new generation. So the seminal legacy that all of us associated with the show are most proud of is that we tripled enrollment at HBCUs. Mm-hmm. That was a tangible and substantive, success for the show for many people who had not only not an awareness of college, but the specific experience at an HBCU. Not a day goes by where all of us don't have someone come up to us and say, I went to school because I watched A Different World. Right. And I hosted a panel with Jasmine last October for the White House Initiative on HBCUs. And I had the unique experience at that conference because I shared with everyone, it's not unusual that someone will say, I went to school because I watched A Different World. But it was the first time where I've had someone say, I went to an HBCU because I watched A Different World, and I'm the president of this school. I mean, wow. That's next level, right?
Right.
So when we think about the legacy and what's really most important is that we started talking about issues that mattered to people, and particularly to our community. The fact that we did an episode about AIDS with Whoopi Goldberg and Tisha Martin Campbell at a time when sponsors were pulling out from the show because you couldn't even, I don't even think you could say the word condom on national television.
Wow, okay.
That's how far out in front and ahead of the curve we were in that respect. Now it's just commonplace, but at that time, it was really difficult. I always talk about one of my favorite episodes, it's Kadeem's as well, was Cats in the Cradle. It was about the racial tensions between Hillman when they were playing a predominantly white institution in a football game, and they made a bet, and it led to a fight and almost had the N-word painted on Ron's car. And the dialogue that transpired about both sides. And if you watched it today, it sounds like exactly what you would hear in a Black Lives Matter movement. You know what I mean? These sorts of conversations that remain relevant. So what is most gratifying for all of us who are part of the show is that you want to do work that matters and work that endures. And A Different World has been that. It's the gift that keeps on giving. And so with this tour, it allows us not only to go out and embrace fans that want to talk about the wedding episode or talk about the haircut that Ron got or something that Walter Oates that Sinbad did, that was funny, but also talk about things that were important that impacted their lives. I had a young man come up to me and at the conference in October, and he just began sobbing. And the man said he was on his way to, a life that would have ended up with him in jail or dead had it not been for A Different World. And he said, now I'm a professor at A&M, Prairie View A&M. And, those are the sorts of things where it's difficult to find the words to express to someone how thankful you are when they're telling you how you changed their life, and it's special, and it just, you never get tired of that. It never gets old.
Right, and that's a very powerful story. So, which leads me to, something that everybody wants to know about, and I don't know if you can even answer this, but what's up with the remake? Is there a remake coming of A Different World? No? See or no? No?
There are grumblings. Once again, grumblings about a possible reboot. Everything is a challenge. So, but again, this goes to the business side that fans don't want to hear about. They're like, just make it happen. Whatever you got to do, make it happen. You need to see it. And so there are talks about it, and we'll see if the talks lead to something substantive. But it could, and we'd love to make it happen. So I'm working on it.
All right, yeah, that's what people want to know. So they need, their kids some good watching material. I hear Blackish is getting a spinoff, right?
I've seen that.
Yeah,
well, they're talking about it.
Yeah, they're talking about it too. So, yeah. Do you want to comment on that? No?
I know it's true. I mean, I'm not one of the producers. I've seen the articles. I know it's true that they're talking about that. But here's what I've always believed. There's more than one show on television with people who are not of color that talk about, well, they're either it's a family show, or they work in a garage, or they're based out of a restaurant, or whatever. There are multiple shows of almost every scenario. Unfortunately, when it comes to shows with people of color, whether that be Hispanic, Black, Asian, what have you, if there's one, it's like you can't have another one. Or there's already a show about college. Oh, no, there's already a show about an advertising agency. Oh, there's already a show about lawyers, or there's already a show about a fixer. We can't have more than one. How many detective shows are on with people who are not of color? How many shows are on with police doctors? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So the idea that and it's unfortunate that oftentimes, or many times, although there's some change now, that our industry does not differentiate that while two people may have the same vocation, they may have a different point of view and therefore tell different stories, both of which are worthy of being heard. That's the real deal. So my comment is, anytime someone of color is successful in getting a project made, congratulations. We need it. What I am evangelical about is balance. When a hot button subject around our town is diversity and inclusion, and I'm all for diversity and inclusion. Unfortunately, many times diversity stops at faces that look different. And diversity, that's not real diversity. If you're going to have diverse looking faces, but they tell the same stories, you haven't accomplished anything.
Right.
So it's really about getting diverse storytellers to come and tell a different point of view that really helps bring about the true diversity that we're talking about. So there's that.
Yeah, and I think you're the person to help lead that up, given your
Well,
that
if you
diverse
insist.
experiences.
From
So
your lips to God's ears,
right.
an executive suite. That's all we need.
Right. So we're wrapping up here. So I just want to know: are there any final words that you want to give the Great Black Speakers audience?
Other than Lawrence is doing a great job. He's put together a great group of speakers. He has curated some of the best and brightest talent. Give the man a call. Book one of these speakers, me or someone else.
Right.
And let us come and engage you in thoughtful and entertaining conversation about subjects that are important to you. That's what we're here to do. Share our experiences, talk about the world, have conversations about how we can change the world and make life better for all of us. Let's do it.
Excellent. Let's do it. So we'll end there. So Brother Bell, so Darryl M. Bell, thank you so much for your time today.
I thank you, Brother Lawrence Watkins. My pleasure.
And if you want to book Darryl, please just head to greatblackspeakers.com. He has a profile. It's Darryl with a Y, so Darryl. If you type that in, we have autocomplete on our platform, so his profile should come right up. So thanks once again, Darryl, and we'll be back with you with another episode here shortly. All right, thanks.
I like it, tech savvy.
Yeah.
Take care.
Bye.